Howdy, friends and neighbors. They had no right to win, but they did.
Welcome to A Word for Wednesday. Thank you so much for joining us. Each Wednesday you will find Boggs Family Ministries is here with our host, Davy Boggs. Having you along with us is a wonderful addition. Now, let's enjoy together A Word for Wednesday.
Thank you, Brother Devin, and thank you for joining us on A Word for Wednesday. Immediately after recording last week's A Word for Wednesday, I started thinking about this. I ended the episode last week with a quote concerning the Battle of Midway from Walter Lord. He said of the Battle of Midway, they had no right to win, yet they did. And in doing so, they changed the course of the war. And it was a great quote. The rest of it is great. But what has been ringing in my ears is that first line. They had no right to win, yet they did. They had no right. You have no right to win, but you can. I was thinking about the children of Israel. I also mentioned last week that often the odds are stacked against them. And a beautiful picture of that is in the book of Judges. It begins earlier, but it culminates in the 7th chapter. Gideon is with the children of Israel. They've been slaves of Midian for a number of years, and the odds are stacked against them. Let me read one verse. This is kind of jumping in to the middle of the story. In fact, the middle of the battle. But listen to this. And the three companies blew the trumpets and brake the pitchers and held the lamps in their hands and the trumpets in their right hand to blow withal. And they cried, the sword of the Lord and of Gideon. And they stood every man. This is how they fought the battle. They stood every man in his place round about the camp, and all the host ran and cried and fled. And the next verse says, the enemy turned their swords on each other. Every man was fighting against his fellow soldier. And the Lord wrought a great victory that day for Israel. They had no right to win, yet they did. Now the odds were stacked against them. They had been slaves, and when you are subservient to another nation, they do everything they can to make sure you cannot rise up against them. So they're already at a disadvantage. And the Midianites have an army of about 125,000 plus. The Israelites gather an army of 32,000 men. So there are 4 enemy soldiers to every one of God's soldiers. The odds are stacked against them. How are they going to win when the army is 4 times their size? Probably better equipped, probably better trained, and certainly the enemy outnumber the children of Israel 4-1. The odds are against them, and you and I often face difficulties where we feel like the odds are stacked against us. And sometimes I have prayed, Lord, I need you to manipulate the odds. I need you to turn this around for me. If I'm going to win this, I've got to have a better situation. And the Lord can and does manipulate the odds often for the children of Israel. He lifts us above in the battle and gives us the advantage. And here in this story, God manipulates the odds. The odds are against them, but God starts fiddling with the odds. But he does not manipulate the odds in the favor of the children of Israel. He makes the odds worse. He speaks to Gideon, who has 32,000 soldiers, and he says to him, Gideon, your army is too big. If you win like this, the people are going to say they did it. They're going to say you did it. Your army's too big. Lord, look at the numbers. We're already outnumbered 4-1. You have too many. He said, let everyone that's fearful go home. If they are fearful and they're afraid, we don't want them in the army. Tell them to go home. And 22,000 men were glad to go home. So now he has 10,000 men to 125,000 plus. Now the enemy has 12 soldiers for every one of the children of Israel. These are horrible odds. 4-1's bad odds. 12-1 really bad odds. How are we going to win when every one of our soldiers has 12 men to fight? They're going to be coming from everywhere. We're going to be lucky to take on 1 or 2. We were going to have to take on 4 apiece. Now God expects us to take on 12 men apiece. But God is not finished fiddling with the odds. He says to Gideon, you still have too many. And he gave them a test. And in this test, this 10,000 man army was whittled down to 300 men. From 32,000 to 10,000 to 300 men. And 300 divides into 125,000 over 400 times. These are devastating odds. There is no way that 300 men equipped in similar fashion to the other soldiers, there's no way that 300 of them can whip 125,000. They've got to beat 400 men apiece. God, what are you doing here? We are going to be annihilated, but listen, God has it in control. When they finally get down to 300 men, God says, the army is just right. Man, that's perfect. They could not win. There's no way for Gideon to win. There's no way for Gideon's army to win. And God says, that's just right. Do you feel like that sometimes? Man, I do. I feel like it can't get any worse. And don't ever say it can't get any worse, because it can get worse. I've said that. This is horrible. Can't get much worse than this. Hide and watch, Davy. Yeah, it can. It can get worse than this. It seems like the Lord allows the devil to whittle my odds down to absolutely devastating levels. There's no way we can win. There's no way Davy can do it. There's no way you can do it. There's no way your family can pull this off. There's no way your pastor can pull you through this. This is a lost cause. And God says, yep, that's about right. That's exactly the way it needs to be. You need to be at a level where you have no right to win. 300 men against 125,000 plus men. You have no right to win. Is that what the doctor said? You can't beat this. Is that what the lawyer said? You can't win this. Is that what your spouse said? You're not going to overcome this. Is that what your job's telling you? You're not going to win this. Is that what you feel like with the devastating blows that you have taken in your family, on your job, in your situations of life, in family relationships, wayward children and grandchildren? There is no way for you to win. You have no right to win. But oh, I got good news for you, saint of God. God says, yeah, that's about right. That's what we want to do. I can't imagine the way Gideon and his men, those 300 men that were left, I'd say they're fearful now. They stayed through that first test because they weren't fearful. They passed God's second test because they're good soldiers. I can about imagine if I was one of those 300, I would be saying, Mr. Gideon, I'm fearful now. 300 of us fighting 400 apiece to win the battle? No, this can't be done. We cannot win. They had no right to win, but God said, yep, that is a perfect number. And he gave Gideon instructions. Divide the army up into 3 companies, 100 apiece, and surround the encampment of this army. Now, think of a city that holds 125,000 people. That's a big area. You put 300 men around those at nighttime. If they don't have any light, you probably can't even see the next guy in line. Either way, you got 300 of you surrounding this army of 125,000 plus men. They probably can't even see the next guy. This circle's wide open. They can't defend anything. They're not going to be effective at attacking anything. But here's what the Lord said. Give every man an empty pitcher and a light, and make sure he's got his sword with him. You put the pitcher over the light, and you stand there, and you watch Gideon. And at a certain time, Gideon broke the pitcher, put the trumpet to his mouth, and sounded the trumpet. And then all of them, seeing the light, hearing the trumpet, all of them did the same thing. Brother Bill Houston said, let your light shine and make a loud noise. And that was their battle strategy, because God is not affected by lopsided odds. You can't win. You have no right to win, but God is not affected by bad odds. When they let their light shine and they sounded the trumpet, the enemy thought a huge army was invading them, and they killed each other and they fled, and Israel won the battle. They had no right to win, but they did. Listen, child of God, you have no right to win. You can't win. You're not gonna win, the devil says. Maybe even friends and family echo those words, but you will by the grace of God. Listen to his voice. Obey him. Let your light shine. Make a loud noise. You can win it. Hallelujah. They had no right to win, but they did. Man, I feel victory in my spirit for me and for you. Keep fighting. victory is assured when God turns the odds upside down. And that is my word for Wednesday. You don't have any right to win, but you will by God's grace. See you next week.
That is our word for Wednesday. We are so glad that you've spent a few minutes with us today. If you've been touched by today's episode, please share it with your friends and family. We welcome your questions or comments below or by email. You can find the email address in the description, along with a link to mile markers, the website for Boggs Family Ministries. Also, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Thank you again, and we hope to see you next Wednesday.
Ciao for now.